All right, there is quite a situation unfolding in Texas. So a man named Daniel Perry, who's an Army sergeant and part-time Uber driver, shot and killed a Black Lives Matter protester named Garrett Foster, who at the time was legally open carrying an AK-47. So jury finds Daniel Perry guilty of murder in this incident. Sparked a huge backlash, and very quickly, Governor Gregg Abbott, and let's put this up on the screen, says he is working as swiftly as Texas law allows regarding the pardon of Sergeant Perry. So there's a process that has to unfold here. It has to go through the Board of Pardons, who are all appointees of Gregg Abbott, so it's not like the outcome here is in doubt. And then Abbott signs off on a pardon here ultimately. So that's sort of the top line of this story. I want to take you through all the details as best we know them, because it is like a very fraught situation. And to give you the TLDR, it's sort of like when Texas stand your ground laws intersect with Texas open carry laws. Yeah. And, the situation was a human catastrophe and, ultimately a protester being shot and killed. Okay, so let's put this up on the screen. This is from ABC News. The headline here is, Army Sergeant guilty in fatal Texas shooting of protester. Let me read you a little bit of this. A Texas jury has convicted a U.S. Army sergeant of murder for fatally shooting an armed protester in 2020 during nationwide protests against police violence and racial injustice. Sergeant Daniel Perry was working for Uber in July 2020 when he turned onto a street and into a large crowd of demonstrators in downtown Austin. In video that was streamed live on Facebook, a car can be heard honking before several shots ring out and protesters begin screaming and scattering. The 28-year-old protester, Garrett Foster, was taken to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Perry, who faces life in prison, now awaits sentencing. The jury, in order to come to this conclusion, they deliberated for 2 days. During closing arguments, Perry's attorney said he had no choice but to shoot Foster as he approached Perry's car with an AK-47 rifle. That's according to the Austin American-Statesman. Prosecutors said Perry could have driven away before firing his revolver. Witnesses testified that Foster, that's the protester who was killed, who was open carrying an AK-47, never raised his rifle at Perry. Perry, who did not testify, told police that Foster did. Let me give you a little bit more detail from what we know here. So to sketch the scene for you, this is back during the Black Lives Matter protests. Austin, like many cities across the country, was a site of some, major and significant protests, disrupting and closing down streets and all of those sorts of things. So Sergeant Daniel Perry is driving for Uber, and he runs actually a red light in order to drive into this crowd of protesters. Now, he faced 2 charges here. One was for shooting and killing the protester, Foster. And the other was actually for hitting a protester with his car. And I think the charge there was like aggravated assault. He was actually let off of that charge because the protesters had said he'd like accelerated into the crowd. The evidence didn't support that. So they let him off of that charge. Now, Perry claimed that this was self-defense, that he saw this man, which, I can understand feeling under threat from someone who's approaching you who has an AK-47. However, part of what complicated his defense is that if you are seen as the person who is inciting the conflict, you don't get to claim self-defense then. Even in Texas, you don't understand your ground laws. Let me go ahead and put some of the other details up on the screen here from local news reporting by the Austin American-Statesman. So again, they indicate he ran a red light at an intersection, drove into a Black Lives Matter march before stopping. Perry's defense team argued he acted in self-defense, but prosecutors contended Perry instigated what happened. In addition, and this has got a lot of attention online, prosecutors highlighted a series of social media posts and Facebook messages in which Perry made statements that they said indicated his state of mind, such as he might kill a few people on my way to work. They are rioting outside my apartment complex. A friend then responded, "Can you legally do so?" Perry replied, "If they attack me or try to pull me out of my car, then yes." So what prosecutors asserted here is that, these messages showed his state of mind and that he basically wanted to kill protesters and find a reason or justification for him to be able to do so. They quoted a law professor in the same article, Jennifer Lauren, who indicated, in terms of Abbott's statement on Texas self-defense laws, she said a jury is instructed to reject the defense when the person asserting it provoked the response, as prosecutors say Perry did when he drove his car into a crowd of protesters. So that could be why they found his claims of self-defense unconvincing, because he ran this red light to intentionally drive into the crowd of protesters, thus inciting the whole incident that ends with the protester being killed. Okay. So that's the backdrop of what the prosecution is saying, what the defense is saying. This became a real cause celeb on the right. There was a big Tucker Carlson monologue, but there was also a whole discussion. Kyle Rittenhouse was involved in sort of like, going to bat for Daniel Perry here. And part of what caused the right-wing reaction was this picture that, let me put this up on the screen. It shows, it's kind of grainy, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see on the left hand in the circle, this is Foster, who again was legally open carrying, exercising, as they might say, his Second Amendment rights in Texas, open carrying an AK-47. And from the picture, there's a woman's head that's in front of the actual gun, which makes it a little bit hard to see where it's pointing. So you could look at this, and without looking really closely, it kind of looks like he's aiming the gun at Perry, which is what Perry's defense claimed in the trial. But if you actually look closely at the positioning here and where the gun is facing, it's actually facing not at Perry, but down towards the ground and towards sort of like the wheels of the car. So in a sense, this picture, even though on first glance could look like it's damning for the prosecution, on closer examination, it in a sense bolsters the case of the prosecution, kind of undermines the defense here. There's another piece. Let me put this up on the screen. Can we do this as a VO, guys, or do we have it as a SAW at control room?
Yeah.
So go ahead and put this VO up on the screen. This is the initial interview that the police conducted with Perry. They had Perry demonstrate how Foster was carrying his rifle. And the reason that this was significant is they asked him at one time if his rifle was pointed at if Foster was pointing his rifle at Perry. And he said explicitly that he didn't want to let him aim at him. So not saying that it was pointed at him explicitly, saying that he wanted to avoid having the rifle pointed at him. So that's effectively what we know here. We can take this down now. Let me go ahead and put this last piece up on the screen, which again has a little bit of the arguments from both the defense and the prosecution, because we want to just really give both sides of this. Opening statements from the state revealed that Foster was a frequent Black Lives Matter protester. Prosecutors said he was protesting nearly every day that summer. The state argued Perry incited the crowd, causing protesters to respond by hitting and kicking his car and also screaming at him. Defense argued Perry had to defend himself after he was swarmed by protesters. Perry, an Army sergeant, came in contact with the protesters after traveling to Austin from Killeen, is that how you say that, Saagar?
Yes.
To drive for Uber for supplemental income. So now we have, after a backlash, Governor Gregg Abbott basically deciding to pardon this guy who was just found guilty by a jury of killing a protester, and that's what we know.
It's a complicated one, We were talking a lot about it before because, like you said, on the one hand, look, we have open carry law in Texas where I'm from. Like, he's completely within his rights to be on the street with
an AK-47. Yeah.
Also, you have a right to stand your ground in Texas, and you have a right to self-defense. And policing the line between the two is very important. Ultimately, what I think damned him before the jury is the initial conversation that he has with the police where he says, I didn't want to give him a chance to aim at me. Whenever he said that, in addition to the social media comments he said about going there, here's the other problem, though, and I know a lot of people are looking at that as the evidence itself. What did we learn from Rittenhouse? You can go to somewhere, even looking for something, but still, if somebody points a gun at you and, in the eyes of the jury, instigates it, you can kill them in self-defense. That is where the actual line of self-defense itself. Here's another thing people need to remember and consider. Everything is different. Self-defense law in particular is different state by state. Texas does have one of the strongest stand your ground laws. That is the basis through which Governor Abbott is saying this. Where I have a little bit of an issue is that Abbott, first of all, came out and said, I'm going to pardon this guy. But for what he forgot is we have one of the least powerful governors in the entire country in Texas. He has to wait for the Board of Parole to say that they want to pardon him.
Yeah.
He says when they do, as you said, and because he appointed all of them, that they'll do it and they'll sign it. But, if you're looking at this, the assessment through the pardon is not actually coming from the facts of the case. It's coming from an assessment of how the governor herself wants to uphold stand your ground law for Texas. So I'm very torn on this. And by the way, on open carry, I know a lot of people are against it, but one of the reasons why people want it to be legal is you don't want to give anybody a pretext to arrest somebody just for having a gun that is on them, even though bad situations like this can occur. So I will speak out for my 2A bros who are out there. Yeah.
Well, you should back Foster's right to exercise. I mean,
both these people have guns. They're doing legal, or at least legally, up until the point of the interaction that had happened with the murder itself. It's one of those where I genuinely don't know. Looking at the jury, clearly they were within mind enough to not convict him of one charge and to convict him of the other charge. On the facts itself, I was not in the jury and I did not see the forensic evidence, where I think the most complicating factor for Perry comes down to the video. Again, I was not there. I genuinely have no idea how I would have voted on this.
It's the video and it's also the fact you ran a red light to intentionally drive into this crowd of protesters. And that's where the defense is able to argue, you don't get to claim self-defense. However you felt about whatever, Foster was doing in this situation, your right to claim self-defense is really negated by the fact that you incited this conflict yourself. And by the way, you're in a car, you could have driven away if you felt threatened. The piece of this that, I think exposes the problems with stand your ground laws is it's completely subjective. And you can feel threatened enough to shoot and kill someone by someone doing something that is totally legal, which is in the state of Texas, open carrying an AK-47. I also would say that it shows some of the problems with allowing people to open carry weapons like AK-47s, where it's going to be natural that people perceive that as like a very threatening situation, a very threatening altercation. The part of this that I find the most troubling is, listen, it's clearly on the part of Abbott, it's very ideological. If the shoe was on the other foot, and this was like an anti-COVID lockdown protest, and you had, a lefty who'd posted, I'm going to go out and kill some right-wingers, drive into a crowd of them and shoot and kill one of them. Does anyone in their right mind think that Tucker Carlson would be doing a monologue outraged about it, or that Gregg Abbott would decide, like, oh, we got to go in and we got to pardon this guy, even though, listen, whatever you think of the prosecutor, and that's part of what they're saying, oh, this is a George Soros-backed progressive DA, whatever. They had to present this to a jury. A jury evaluated the evidence. They said no on one charge, and they said yes on killing this protester. So, to me, yes, I do think the way that these laws interact is complicated and troubling in a way that, to my mind, sort of undermines the notion that you should have either the stand your ground or open carry AK-47 on the books, but this is Texas and that's what they've decided to do. But given that you have, a complicating set of facts and you have a jury that carefully evaluated this evidence and unanimously decided to move forward, I think it's outrageous to overturn it based on sort of like social media outrage from a group that you consider to be your core base.
I would say at least let the appeals process play out, because that's another one, is you're actually preempting appeals for a pardon.
Yeah, which is extraordinary.
Unprecedented in the history of the state of Texas. Whenever a pardon has been offered, from what I've been able to gather, there's never been a pardon on a murder conviction that did not at least very, very much go through
the
full appeals process to play out. Because we should, don't forget, sure, you can say all you want, like a progressive prosecutor and a progressive jury in Austin, which is again, I don't know any of these people. Not the prosecutor, obviously, but in terms of the jury, I have no idea who these people are. Hopefully they acted in good faith, but it's not like the appeals courts in Texas are liberal by any means. So if he's got a good chance, look, on the facts, if he has a good chance at overturn, there is no state that you'd be better positioned in than the state of Texas or the Supreme Court of the state of Texas before that process were to play out, where he again can continue to argue the facts that he did before that. I actually would support that playing out more so because, Krystal, what Texas Governor Abbott is saying is this violates stand your ground law. That is a matter for our courts to decide, not just the jury. If jury nullification came in this case, then actually that then needs to be further analyzed, and more importantly, in my mind, the sacrosanct nature of the way that the courts themselves determine whether this violated Texas Stand Your Ground law. Again, a matter for the Supreme Court of the state of Texas before the governor were to be get involved here. That is how you properly were to handle something like this.
Yeah. Right, because what about the, Second Amendment right of Foster to open carry his...
No, he was totally within his right. I support his right to do so. I think, I mean, listen, it was a chaotic situation. Maybe don't bring guns either way to that.
Not
but
a great
listen,
idea.
That's not something can be not a bad idea or not a good idea, but it can also be legal. And I support it to be legal, specifically for horrific situations. So anyway, this is a matter in my mind for the Supreme Court of the state of Texas, and I don't think the governor should be doing this. I really don't.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.